Welcome back. Of course, now let's have a look at September 1995, where our Newcastle Knights reserve grade side had to seek revenge on the Cronulla Sharks to win their first ever grand final.
Although Cronulla was the Knights' preferred opponent for Saturday's match, Newcastle was expecting nothing less than another intense struggle in a bid to keep their season alive.
They're in a fairly confident frame of mind at Cronulla, and I don't think that loss will have deterred that confidence.
There are no major injury concerns, allowing coach Reilly to name an unchanged lineup, with Brett Grogan once again named in the centres for Nathan Barnes, who is unlikely to recover from ankle damage this season. 5 players are likely to need painkilling injections before taking the field, including Andrew Johns, who, unlike last week, will be able to train over the coming days. Johns is the Knights' leading contender for the Rothmans medal announced in Sydney tonight. The improvement in his shoulder adding to the growing confidence.
There's a real chance of achieving something extraordinary, so I think everyone's in that frame of mind that just play one game at a time, get over this weekend, and anything's possible.
Andrew Johns says he was honoured to get in the top few in the Rothmans medal and that Cronulla's Paul Green was a worthy winner. But if the Knights have their way, the cheeky Sharks halfback won't be a winner on Saturday.
We're working him this week, and he's a pretty good side stepper and got a good kicking game, so we've got to watch him this weekend. We're working on this week at training.
Johns believes the Knights have to improve 40 to 50% on their game against Norths to beat Cronulla. One glaring problem for Newcastle is the high ball, Coach Reilly hinting he might fight fire with fire.
It is very difficult to defend against that type of pinpoint accuracy, and we hope to be able to do a little bit of that ourselves.
Reilly says from here is the chance for his players to fulfil a dream. Meanwhile, it seems Andrew Johns isn't just a fine footballer, he's also a fashion trendsetter. You must be due for another haircut.
I don't know about that, everyone's got one now.
Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The entrance brought more than 5,000 spectators at Gosford's Graham Park to its feet midway through the first half, when a Wyong blunder led to Patrick Hart posting the first try. The conversion and penalty goal to teenager Brian Rees gave the underdogs an 8-0 advantage. The Wyong raids came regularly through the second term, some with pinpoint accuracy. But it wasn't until late in the match that they finally cracked the entrance defence. Quick hands resulted in a 4-pointer to Lenny Bevan, the division's leading try scorer. The entrance foiled several late charges to take the match and its 4th premiership. Its last major win was in 1993. Geelong and Newcastle last met in June, the Falcons winning both on the scoreboard and in the discipline stakes. Andrew Dennis received a 3-week suspension after headbutting Grant Kruger. The pair set to meet again tomorrow night.
Andrew and myself are built, pretty much similar and we play similar, so, it's sort of self-respect too. You want to play better than the guy in your position, so, that can bring some heated exchanges out.
Geelong is out of playoff contention, but after its last emotional meeting with the Falcons, will be keen to spoil the locals' chance of gaining the home court advantage in the playoffs. To do that, the Falcons must win both final matches. But even then, the 17-9 season record would not guarantee them a place in the top 4.
It would be as well as any Falcon team has ever done, particularly with position on the table if we achieve that top 4 finish.
Meantime, the Falcons have renamed their expanding primary schools knockout the Michael Johnson Trophy. The title change is in recognition of Johnson's magnificent 14-year career with Newcastle, with the finals to be played as a curtain raiser tomorrow night.
This is the breeding ground of our future gold medalists. 1,000 youngsters from across the Hunter took part in the championships at Newcastle's #1 sports ground, a lead into the state titles. The near-perfect conditions led to some personal bests. 11-year-old Heidi Burgess from New Lambton broke the 200-metre record twice. Daniel Izzard from Beresfield broke the boys' 200-metre record. An amazing 8 new marks were set at the meet. East Lakes took out the zone point score from Maitland and the Manning area. As a Newcastle Knight, Andrew Johns must have nerves of steel.
I enjoy the pressure, I enjoy kicking, so I'm not going to let it get to me.
At the business end of the season, every point is vital. Last weekend against Cronulla, the halfbacks' kick to level the score at 18-all was the boost the side needed for their historic win. This season, he has kicked 85 goals with a success rate of 79%. Only Manly's Matthew Ridge is ahead of him. And the secret of his kicking goes back to his junior football in the coalfields.
I just sort of visualise myself going back to where I learned how to kick and how I used to polish my skills assessed on sports ground.
Johns must be one of few in the Newcastle camp who is hoping Manly half Jeff Tuvey is fit to play. Questions are still being asked over his neck problems.
He's pressing the World Cup selections and so am I, so it's going to be a good duel and hopefully he'll be fit.
Meanwhile, Robbie O'Davis has been declared fit for the Manly clash. There had been some concerns over a recurring back injury. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Both Warners Bay and Newcastle City were both struggling first up in the Newcastle AFL Grand Final for 95. And of course, both teams knew what to do. And of course, Newcastle City were of course doing the right thing, kicking goals. And of course, Newcastle City, the 1995 Newcastle AFL Grand Final premiers.
The Knights limped off the bus last night, still coming to terms with a 1-point victory after a field goal from Matthew Johns.
I knew one of the Matty or Joe was going to go for it tonight, and as soon as I hit it, it was just so sweet. I was just so happy.
Muir was outstanding, scoring 2 tries, but was one of a growing number to join the injury list. These are just some of the concerns, offset by the possibility of Mark Glanville rejoining the squad and the growing confidence.
Yeah, plenty of noodles going around, but we'll do the job.
If we're on our game, we can beat the Canberras and the Manleys, and there's no worries about that at all.
After a forgetful first half, the Falcons turned a 9-point deficit at the break into a 5-point advantage at three-quarter time. The 60-36 second half effort was sparked by Grant Kruger, who hit 13 in the third term and received plenty of attention from Geelong.
When it was time for a character check, he had his hand up and he stepped forward to be counted, and that was a great performance.
With Tony Jensen returning to his best and contributions from Hayes, Johnson and Smith, the Falcons ran away with the game in the final quarter for a 17-point victory.
It's not the glamour of first grade, but it's the same search for glory after a season of hard work. The Knights reserves headed off to Sydney this afternoon, seeking another life and a crack at the grand final.
Well, only one game away. We've put ourselves in a position to win it now. So now it's just up to the boys. They're young, as I said, so their enthusiasm and their hunger's there.
It's been an up-and-down season for Steve Crow, playing in both first and reserve grade. The big forward is all heart. Tomorrow, the reserves play Gold Coast. 2 weeks ago, they beat them 32-16, but it was no walkover. It's expected the boys will get through and meet Cronulla for the second year in a row for the season decider. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
A wounded night squad limped off the bus at Marathon last night, most happy but reflecting on what could have been.
And yeah, we didn't really do enough to win the game, so we have to be satisfied with the effort we put in.
Butterfield's effort in the opening minutes typified the performance before he was cruelly forced from the field with ankle ligament damage. Another original Knights member, Robbie McCormack, was again outstanding in his final appearance for the club.
It's pretty sad, not to be able to pull the red and blue jumper on again it's a sad occasion, but it's a decision I made a while back, and I'm happy with the decision.
Coach Mal really is delighted to have achieved his goal of a top 4 finish, but naturally was disappointed not to qualify for the decider.
I just thought midway through that second half that Manly were probably fading a bit, and if we'd have really subjected them to pressure instead of surrendering the ball, I think we could have easily come away with it.
And someone who thinks the Knights will make the grand final next year is Wally Lewis. The former Australian captain was a special guest at the Excalibur Club lunch and believes Newcastle is in good hands with the Johns boys at the helm.
I had a bit of an argument with a bloke up on the Gold Coast a few years ago that said, when I said, go and buy those two kids, they're fair players, and he told me that they couldn't play. Then again, that's the reason why I suppose the Gold Coast are still sitting down the bottom and Newcastle are up the top.
But the season isn't over for some. Bill Peden and Brett Grogan are both available for an in-form reserve grade side, while Butterfield is yet to secure his long-term future with the club.
I'll leave it in the hands of the people that run this club, but I hope they get their act together soon.
The Falcons had a relaxed last training this morning, picking up on their rugby league skills. Coach Wiseman was more at home with an unusual mix of American football and basketball. Adelaide trained soon after, all eyes on Jojo English, who was rated 70% fit with an injured ankle. He should expect some special attention from the Falcons. The 36ers are favoured to grab the first quarter final after winning their last 9 games in a row.
All good winning streaks have to come to an end, but yes, they have been playing well.
Falcons import Reggie Smith will be under pressure. With his foul shooting at just 46%, his coach will be expecting more tonight. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
It was a semi-final clash of the Newcastle AFL between Warners Bay and Nelson Bay. Then it was a grand final between Newcastle City and Warners Bay, as Newcastle City were crowned premiers. Meanwhile, in the final of Newcastle hockey on Saturday, West are up against Souths.
Michael Johnson was brought down from Townsville in 1982 by Turner, who was one of the team's original players and coach in 1981 and 82. But for the 1994 MJ model and the Falcons, there's no room for sentiment tomorrow night.
That was 14 years ago, and Bob moved on after that year and has been with Canberra and now Sydney. He's had a great career, and it's sad to see a guy who's put so much into basketball leave. Being Bob's last game and possibly a couple of their players as well, I'm sure they have a little something extra.
And if that's the case, the match will be a beauty. All the Kings and Falcons encounters have been tough affairs over the years, and this one won't be any different. There are 15 various scenarios for next week's playoffs, which will only be unravelled following this weekend's final round. Newcastle could finish anywhere from 2nd to 6th.
Everybody wins, then we finish 5th. So we need somebody to help us out to get into the top 4, but for sure we have to win our ball game.
A throng of supporters gathered at Newcastle Station this morning, just one of several stops where loyal fans could board a special train to Sydney. With a few brave exceptions, most proudly boasted the red and blue, all hoping for a return trip next Sunday. And these hardy souls believe that's a real possibility, queuing for grand final tickets 24 hours before they go on sale. Meantime, Knights captain Paul Harrigan received a boost on the eve of today's game when he was named Country Origin Player of the Year. Also at the annual awards night in Sydney, Cessnock's Jamie Forbes became the 4th Newcastle player in 5 years to win the Country Player of the Year award. The 24-year-old, who was signed with the Sydney Tigers for next season, beat West Steve Storey for the honour.
Oh, mate, it was a surprise, actually. It's a great honour. I still can't really believe it.
And Knights reserve grade skipper Steve Crowe will miss next Sunday's grand final after X-rays revealed he broke his ankle in yesterday's win over the Gold Coast. The win against the Kings still wasn't enough for the Falcons to climb into the top four, leaving them to play last year's grand finalists, the informed Adelaide, in the quarterfinals. But the Falcons captain is far from concerned about his former club being the first hurdle on the road to the title.
It wouldn't have mattered who. I was ready to play the Houston Rockets.
Adelaide has won 9 straight, which included a victory over the Falcons in their last meeting at the Entertainment Centre. But Coach Wiseman feels his side matches up well against the 36ers and is quite happy to play the return matches in Adelaide, where Newcastle was victorious earlier in the season.
Not having the home court advantage playing-wise in the playoffs doesn't really matter. We feel as confident playing in the position we are in as we would if we had the home court advantage.
We'd love to get into the finals and win it all for Newcastle, and I think the guys are really focused to do that this year.
Meantime, Kings centre Dean Uthoff has been reported for allegedly using his elbow on a referee in the Sydney-Newcastle match on Saturday night. The Waratahs completed their grand final preparation with an intensive training run last night. They haven't played in a premiership decider since 1983 and last won a title 4 years earlier. And despite Singleton's impressive record, the Waratahs believe they have nothing to lose.
No one thinks we can win it, so I can't think of any better way to go into it. This is the fourth time we've played them this year, and they've beaten us on 3 occasions, so, we'll go in as underdogs. They're red-hot favourites, and we'll see what happens on the day. Yeah.
And on the same day last year, Singleton was upstaged by Maitland in the grand final. The Bulls are out to become the first side since University in 1984 to win the premiership undefeated, with Wallaby halfback Steve Merrick likely to play a leading role.
You can't play your whole game towards one person. We've got to be aware of just how exciting and how much he can change the game.
Kick-off tomorrow at number 2 Sports Ground is at the unusual time of 4:30. The Knights began disastrously with captain Steve Crowe stretchered off the field with what appeared to be a serious knee injury. Minutes later, they lost another experienced forward in Tim Madison, who was felled by Scott Freestone. Unperturbed, the Knights rallied with 2 tries from set pieces. The first by winger John Carlaw, who beat his man and then set sail for the line. The second gave the Knights a 12-0 half-time lead and was to the other flanker in Darren Albert, who was the recipient of a magnificent pass from Craig Camorley. Brendan McKell secured the match for Newcastle 15 minutes into the second half, swooping on a coast mistake and racing the length of the field. Carlaw finished the game in style for Newcastle. His brilliant solo effort came from nothing and capped a memorable performance. That effort certainly inspired first grade, who were farewelled by hundreds of fans at Marathon Stadium this afternoon. They'll be hoping to join reserves on grand final day next week, but must overcome Manly tomorrow to qualify.
It was a struggling one for Newcastle City in the Newcastle AFL Grand Final. And of course, it was one that all of us know. And of course, Newcastle City were too good. And of course, Newcastle City, the 1995 Newcastle AFL Grand Final premiers. And of course, they were just too strong for their rivals. Singleton knew exactly what to do with their rivals in the Newcastle Rugby Union Grand Final, and of course it was to knock them out. And of course with a lot of goals left, and also a lot of tries. And also, Singleton were crowned the 1995 Newcastle Rugby Union Grand Final premiers.
In a tense first quarter, Dean Uthoff was ejected from the match for allegedly shouldering the referee. But the Kings rallied for a 9-point lead at the break, the retiring Bob Turner on line for the perfect farewell. But the experienced hands came to the fore for the Falcons, Michael Johnson and the captain cool in the crisis. Hayes was also outstanding in defence, the Falcons drawing level, sending the game into overtime. They maintained their outstanding extra period record this season, prevailing by 3 points. So in the quarterfinals, Newcastle confronts a 36ers side which has won 9 straight on Wednesday, with the return matches in Adelaide. In other playoff games, the 3 Melbourne-based sides play Perth, Brisbane and Illawarra. Meantime, the NBL has announced it will review the timing of its season, exploring the option of moving the competition into the summer.
Meanwhile, in the ABL, Newcastle has defeated Sydney 114 to 111.
The Knights strolled into their third straight reserve grade grand final with the help of the elusive sidestep of 20-year-old John Carlaw. His semi-final double against the Gold Coast provided the perfect introduction to semi-final football, and he's keen to repeat the effort in the grand final.
Another 2 will be great, but I don't care if we win 1-0, it'll be good.
Carlaw was included in the team announced today that hopes to erase the memory of consecutive grand final losses. Brett Grogan and Michael Eager have dropped back to reserves to team up in the centres. Steve Crowe is out with a broken leg. Tim Madison has been named as the new captain, provided he overcomes a neck injury. But most concern centres around Craig Camorley, whose injured ankle threatens to break the successful scrum-based combination he shares with his brother.
That's my biggest problem at this stage is Craig Camorley. We've only won 1 game this year when one of them's been on the park. Both of them been on the park every time we've won. So yeah, they're very important, the 2 brothers.
First graders Robbie Ross and Bill Peden will start from the bench. And the season's been extended for some other Knights top graders, with 6 players named in the World Cup train-on squad. Richard O'Leary, NBN News. The 36ers arrived in Newcastle late this afternoon, expecting the quarter-finals games against the Falcons to be nail-biters.
It could go down to 3 in overtimes in each game. That's how good the teams are. So whatever it is, certainly we're looking forward to it, and I know that Newcastle is too.
Coach Dunlap says American import Jojo English will play despite question marks over an injured ankle. One Falcon probably hoping Jojo is fit is Grant Kruger. The forward is well known for taking on the opposition, whatever their size or stature. You obviously don't mind missing that.
Oh no, well, that's part of the game, so someone's got to do it.
The Falcons have lost only 1 game in the last 6, and that was to the 36ers. But the team isn't too worried, expecting their good form this season should pull them through.
We're competitive. It's down to 8 teams now. Any one of the 8 can win the championship, and we say, why not us?
The Falcons have a 17-win, 9-game loss this season, their best effort since 1985. The team is hoping the fans will turn out tomorrow night at the Newcastle Entertainment Centre. More than 1,500 seats are still available. Peter Ryan, NBN News. The Falcons came out firing with their aggressive start, leaving the Adelaide players in shell shock. Smith and Kruger dominated under the basket in a game that was not for the faint of heart. Tony Jensen was always in the thick of it, chasing everything to the death.
Yeah, it's playoff basketball, and people are going to put their body on the lines, and you're going to get hit a lot because people just want to win and they'll do anything to win.
Jensen was the game's best, grabbing 35 points. The Falcons led at every quarter. Nearly everything they touched turned to gold. Butch Hayes was inspirational. Matty Alexander played a blinder from the bench. The Falcons proved their doubters wrong with the 101-93 victory, but there is more work to come. They play Adelaide again tomorrow night in Adelaide. A win would put them through to the semis. A loss would mean another game in the best-of-3 clashes in Adelaide on Sunday. Tony Jensen is feeling confident.
We have to keep composed, play the way we know we can play and play to our strengths, and I think we'll get the win and we'll be home on our lounges Sunday watching the footy.
The Australian rules legend was a special guest at the night's grand final lunch as the club strives for its first senior premiership. With that goal in mind, the Knights couldn't have called on a better credentialed man, as Barassi won a remarkable 10 flags and knows what it takes to claim a title.
It often gets down to who's got the most courage and who wants it the most. That's why you often see a team from the year before who's missed out just raising their desperation levels an extra notch.
And that's the exact position the Knights find themselves in after losing last year's grand final to Cronulla. In a confidence boost towards reversing that result, Craig Morley seems certain to play, but may relinquish the goal kicking to Andrew Tangata-Toa, who constantly hit his training target this morning.
Mate, third time lucky, hopefully, but no, there's a good air of confidence going around. Everyone's pretty confident we can beat Cronulla.
His coach shares the optimism but admits to feeling the tension in the build-up to Sunday.
Coach was ordinary early in the week, but he's not too bad at the moment, so it's coming in the way the players are a bit nervous now, so that's probably a good sign.
Ordinary would also be the best description for Steve Crow's luck. The skipper forced onto the sidelines for yet another grand final after breaking his leg last week.
Didn't feel so bad last year. I played only first grade and it wasn't really part of the squad, but this year we've won 6 in the trot and I was part of all those wins, so it is disappointing to miss out.
The first quarter was the Robert Rose show, as the 36ers import set an NBL record for points scored in the opening term, connecting with 21 of his team's 25. But the Falcons kept pace with the locals, Tony Jensen copping plenty of extra attention. Level at the end of the first, the next 2 periods were a nightmare for the Falcons. Reggie Smith got into foul trouble, forcing him to the bench. Coach Wiseman lost his cool, earning a technical foul, and the Falcons found themselves 27 behind early in the third term. But in a confidence boost for tomorrow afternoon, Newcastle rallied to be just 11 behind at the final break. The margin was cut to 3 in the last quarter before that man stung the Falcons again. Rose finished with 46 for the match, almost half the 36ers' points. The decider to be played in Adelaide tomorrow afternoon. It took just 9 minutes for University to open their grand final account, David Nyman scoring one of the easier goals of his career. 6 minutes later, Peter Sweeney's lightning cross found the ever-present Andrew Abbo for a 2-0 lead. Veteran Sweeney was playing as if it was his first grand final and set up his side's third, scored by Greg Nyman after a goalmouth skirmish. West finally got on the board through Dean Farrow, but any chance of a comeback was ended when Greg Nyman scored his second 4 minutes into the second half. Amanda Payne got Novos off to a bright start in the women's grand final, which was answered by the first of a Julie Towers hat-trick for Oxford's. Sally Richardson also scored twice for Novos, with Alex Sharmy breaking a 3-all deadlock with 4 minutes remaining. The Knights were welcomed home last night at the Newcastle Workers Club, most sporting a new look. Among them, captain Tim Madison, whose shiny dome matched the cherished trophy he proudly displayed.
Stephen done a good job. He got his boat down there from the Gold Coast and come down and cut all our hairs. And mate, I'm pretty happy with mine.
And when it comes to doing something just a little offbeat, you can bet one prop will follow the other.
Nice haircut. Yeah, lovely. Looks good. What do you reckon?
But for Collins and Madison, yesterday's win was a fitting farewell, as they, along with Robbie Ross, are the only 3 reserve graders not contracted for next season. And the man who's played a large part in their development is coach Peter Sharp, who are still coming to terms with the triumph.
6 weeks ago we were no chance, and all of a sudden we're premiers, so it's been a great 6 weeks, and it's great credit to them. They've been magnificent.
As was halfback Brett Kamali in yesterday's 22-10 win. Ironically, brother Craig was on crutches last night, but 6 weeks ago Brett was in the same situation and told he would miss the rest of the season. He recovered, and the rest is history.
2 tries. Lucky he scored 2 tries the whole year, but this game is sensational.
First and reserve grades will parade down Hunter Street at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning.
The Knights' first and reserve grade were treated as kings for a day, the fans turning out to thank the players for their effort. Reserve grade's history-making win over Cronulla was the Knights' first grand final victory, coach Peter Sharp proudly displaying the Victor's Cup.
You're not going to let go of that cup?
No, not for a while. No, it's took too long to get. We're going to hold it for a while.
Not that you can tell, but the reserve graders have been letting their hair down these last 2 days. The first graders were a little more subdued, but thrilled by the attention nonetheless.
Oh, it's fantastic. Very good. Especially on a day like this to turn up and give all the support. Much appreciated from the boys.
And the support didn't stop there. Hundreds more adoring fans lined up to meet the stars at Stockland Mall. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
While most of the Breakers squad have had a short break from the game, Ralph Mayer has been preoccupied with regaining his fitness. The 31-year-old ruptured a medial ligament at his knee in a Waratah Cup game 2 months ago.
Well, it's been a gradual transition through physiotherapists and just rebuilding the muscle bulk around that knee joint. It's come along, but yeah, hopefully it's worked out well, and I'm looking forward to being a part of the team on Friday.
And that task will be against a formidable UTS Olympic side, formerly known as Sydney Olympic, which contains a striker well known to the Breakers. Former Newcastle player Nick Meredith has been part of Olympic's solid pre-season build-up, with locals only too aware of his talents. But Mayer is also capable of producing that winning touch and will play a vital role this Friday night.
They're going to be strong. Obviously, we've only been together for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. We haven't really had a trial game, so that's going to be difficult. But we'll go out there and give our best shot, and I'm sure we'll come away with a pleasing result.
It's a replay of last year's grand final with minor premiers University going into tomorrow's decider a firm favourite.
Our last 5 encounters, they've beaten us 4 times. We've been lucky to get away with 1 win, so I'm quite happy to go in as underdogs.
Deering brought up 300 first-grade games this season, but it's a veteran from University that could return to haunt West tomorrow. At 43, Peter Sweeney still more than holds his own and is part of a talented lineup.
Peter Sweeney, very quick player, wealth of knowledge, and on his day, very dangerous player. We'll have to watch him and mark him very carefully tomorrow.
West fullback Sean Sparks remains under an injury cloud, while in the women's final at 1 o'clock, minor premiers Novos take on Oxfords.
After beating Cronulla in the reserve grade grand final, the Newcastle Knights still had a lot of celebration yet to come.
The Knights and Stockland joined forces for the first time earlier this season, with the property giant re-signing as Newcastle's major naming rights sponsor for next year. Included in the deal, a novel approach for the Knights to raise extra cash.
They have indicated to us that they are willing to give us a block of land at their new Maitland development, to which we'll be able to auction that off or run some sort of raffle or art union.
There was further good news for the Knights today, with stalwarts Tony Butterfield and Steve Crow opting to remain with the club for next season. Both have been injury-prone of late, prompting this response from the coach.
We're not issuing any sticks or crutches with the contract. We just want to get them on the field.
The club will lose 6 players to Super League next season, with Nathan Barnes Parramatta bound. Really hopes to add to the major gains during his stay in England over the coming weeks, which will include a stopover in America, visiting universities and professional sporting organisations.
It's really a fact-finding mission. We're looking at all aspects, including marketing aspects. We'll bring as much information back as we possibly can to improve the professionalism of the club.
For more than 30 years, the Newcastle Rugby League has had 10 teams. That could be about to change with the introduction of sides from the Central Coast, Upper Hunter and Foster Tuncurry.
The ideal scenario would be 16 sides in the competition, split into two zones, the north and south, to eliminate travel, then a cross playoff in the semi-finals.
A Newcastle Rugby League Premiership review meeting tonight will look at the possibility of revamping the competition. This year's grand final between Curry and West drew 15,000 people, a boost on previous years. But the NRL wants to maintain interest in the game. The competition has lost fans to the Knights, and the possible introduction of Super League could divide gate takings even further.
It's going to make it very, very tough for the Newcastle Rugby League if they do get up and running. We'll fight very, very hard to make sure we've got the best product we can possibly put on the paddock, and hopefully people come and watch us.
While the NRL is confident teams like Central Charlestown and Waratah Mayfield would be in a new competition, they may struggle in a higher quality grade. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The match in Coffs Harbour was the Australian Barbarians' first run before their tour of Canada. They were pitted against the Phil Hawthorn Memorial side. The Barbarians, with the help of Glenn Ellis, scoring 14 tries to 7. All money raised will go towards leukaemia research and junior development. In the first Raymond Terrace to Stockton's Boat Rowers Hotel Surfboat Marathon, Nobbies proved too strong, narrowly defeating Swansea Belmont. Only 21 seconds separated the crews over the 25-kilometre race, with Cape Hawke finishing third. Meantime, in netball, Newcastle, representing New South Wales, was beaten in the Interstate Challenge in Victoria, while in Central Coast Aussie rules, Banno Bay has reversed last year's grand final result down in Terrigal. It was a disappointing end to an outstanding season. The Falcons were beaten in both quarter-final matches in Adelaide, losing the series 2-1. But as they've done all season, the side showed great character, particularly in Game 2, when they recovered from a 27-point deficit to come within 3 points of the lead.
I told the players afterwards that we had a very good year. We're proud of them. The effort and the character of this basketball team was exceptional.
Coach Wiseman will be at the helm again next season, but like last year, he'll be looking for an import to partner Butch Hayes. The Falcons are resigned to losing Reggie Smith, with NBA and European clubs expressing interest in the power forward.
We would love to have him, but the simple fact is we can't afford him. He's worth too much money in other markets.
The club hopes to talk to all players in the next 3 weeks, including the likes of Tony Jensen and Michael Johnson, with a view to next season.
Obviously, we're going to want a lot of the players back. We've got some good talent here, and I would say most of the players back. But we do have to look at ways to improve the team, and that means we have to put each position under scrutiny.
Dirt track racing can become well known as monster trucks. So too can crashes into cars. But that's what's been occurring in northern New South Wales lately.
After a year in the wilderness, the Breakers are back. This time it appears to be with all the right ingredients, a positive administration, working within an expanding new national body, and a coach dedicated to rebuilding the club.
Newcastle has been shafted in the past by the politics of soccer in this country. I think the people that are now in charge will not shaft this club. The people that did shaft them are gone.
Cosmina is determined to build his side around northern New South Wales youth, believing such talent could give the Breakers a title within 5 years. Such an attitude is reflected in the senior squad announced and paraded at today's launch. Leading the team will be David Lowe, who, despite some concerns about the lack of a trial game, believes the team will give a good account of itself in the season opener today week against UTS Olympic.
Hasn't been ideal, but come next Friday night there's only 11 of them, 11 of us, and we'll be giving it our all.
And they'll be doing it in this new strip modelled by Breakers scholarship holders Clayton Zane and Glenn Moore, while Ralph Mayer demonstrated the club's away uniform. Further good news for the club will follow shortly with the addition of a major sponsor.
And we are still negotiating, but as I said, they are very encouraging, and we hope to make an announcement within the next 10 days.
24-year-old Matt O'Connor had a strong season with the Canberra Kookaburras. He has represented Australia in under-19s and 21s, and he's played as an emerging Wallaby.
He plays he's centre and captain for the Canberra Kookaburras, but we envisage him filling the 5'8" role with us.
The Hunter Mariners have made an offer to O'Connor, reported to be around $200,000 a year. Today, the ACT Rugby Union released a press statement saying O'Connor was staying put, but the player himself is holding off on a decision until after his wedding this weekend.
I just thought that it was fairly important to talk things through with Jo, my fiancée, and decide early next week.
Meanwhile, the Mariners say they have signed 30 players already, including a South African rugby test outside back. The club needs another 10 players for next year. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Michael Gardner has convincingly won 2 of his 3 amateur bouts, and his corner is more than happy to see him move into the professional ranks despite the limited experience. He's had a taste of what's likely to follow, having sparred with the Waters brothers each week where he's held his own.
As a matter of fact, you're going to come down and watch him fight, and as I say, we do, we go down there and as I say, we spar regularly with the boys. That's the only way they get any better, is spar world-rated fighters like Troy and Guy.
Shorts Gym has also produced 2 of the Hunters' 5 representatives in the New South Wales team for the first Australian schoolboys tournament. Jamie Pittman and Adam Fraser will join 3 other Hunter reps in Jamie Kilroy, Gavin Lowcock and Lance Cox in Hobart next week. All won gold in the recent state titles and are a good chance of being among the medals again in Tasmania.
Well, they're all good boys, mate, and I just hope that we do well from the Hunter Valley.
Newcastle beat Brisbane and Gosford for the right to stage the Speedway Championships, which will boast Australia's best 16 riders.
That represents the 2 top riders from each state, and then there's the Motorcycling Australia will select the additional 4 riders to make up the field of 16.
The 2-day event is expected to attract more than 5,000 spectators to the showground and entertainment centre. This should translate into tens of thousands of dollars for the city. Meanwhile, more than $5,000 is up for grabs in tomorrow's final of the Invitation Classic Pairs at Windale Gateshead Bowling Club. Maryland's bowler Peter Rubin teamed with Queenslander Charlie Hayes to down the local combination of Noel Waite and Bob Kennedy 23-14 to win a place in the decider. They'll play Swansea's Rocket Thompson and Waratah's Simon Lack, who were too good in the other semi-final, downing Bob Bowell and John O'Connell. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Yeah, of course, don't forget 1996 tomorrow. That's it for now. Thanks again for your company. From all of us here, good night.